Welcome, everyone. I'm Cheryl Barr, and I'm a master coach. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Kevin Scobey. And Kevin is a longtime student of spiritual teachers, and he's also a facilitator of David Hawkins' work. David Hawkins has written many books, from Power versus Force and Letting Go. I'll let Kevin say more about David, since he's been studying his work since 1999. I'm lucky enough to be in one of Kevin's groups. So welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you know about the map, and then we can go further into what it means.
It's a helpful guide. I've noticed that you can just look at the map and you can start to allow your mood to change just by looking at it and studying it. So it's kind of powerful in its own right. One thing I like to share with people about the map is that it's non-dual. It's non-dual. So it shows us various emotions and their corresponding levels. What I notice, or what I take away from this right away, is that you see certain things like hatred and love as not being opposites, but sort of belonging to the same continuum.
Well, let's look at this on the map itself.
Yeah, there's two different forms of hatred. There's one that's hate at 150,
Okay, there we
and
go,
there's
right
another,
here.
yeah. And so
Okay.
you see hate at 150 is not the opposite of love at 500, and love is
Right. And love
is
is up here at this
yeah.
higher level. One thing we might share is that enlightenment is up here at the top. That's where Buddha was. Death is down here below shame, which is zero. And that these are very dense emotions down here. And these, as you move up in terms of your level of consciousness, you are moving up to a higher energetic tone or higher vibration.
Yes, and so we can look at this in two ways. One is we can look at the scale to kind of take a notice of our mood or a passing mood or a passing kind of a transitory vibration. And we could
Yep.
also look at it as a level of consciousness that belongs to us more generally. So a lot of times when we're talking about the map, we're talking about as it relates to people, we're talking about two different things in terms of there's your overall level of consciousness, and then there's the mood you might be in. There's the passing at any given point, which doesn't really explain your entire level of consciousness, but it explains your mood in the moment. And so anytime you
Right.
get into a negative or stressful mood, you can look on the map here and see where you are and see how you feel and see if you can allow yourself to go up to the next level. And you might be surprised that you actually can, but just by looking at the map.
I did that this
Yeah.
morning, actually. I didn't look at the
Okay.
map, but I
Yeah.
was down in a lower vibrational state. I was feeling,
Hmm.
I think, some sort of grief and sadness.
Yeah.
And I went for a walk with my dog, because that's always nice to be outside. And I pulled up Louise Hay's affirmations and started listening to those as I
Hmm.
walked,
Oh,
because
that's
I
good.
didn't want to stay in that place. That's an
Yeah.
example of how somebody could do that.
Yes, because what the what the world tends not to know about is how much choice plays a factor in these emotions, various emotions that we're experiencing. And sometimes those choices are conscious and sometimes they're unconscious. And this kind of brings the possibilities to the forefront. It shows us the possibilities.
Hmm. And when you say, for the person who doesn't understand duality, non-dual, will you
Hmm.
explain that? The map is a,
So unconsciously, in the unconscious, the egoic mind tends to divide the world into this or that. Tends to divide the world. That's the world that we project. So
mhm,
the egoic mind tends to project a world that is either this or that, or here or there, and it gets caught in opposites. It gets caught in good versus bad, or good versus evil, or should versus shouldn't. And by getting heavily caught in those dualities of should versus shouldn't, or good versus evil, and I'm not saying that there isn't anything to those, but what the egoic mind does is make two very separate categories out of something that really has no separate categories.
right.
They're not separated as opposites. they're separated in a different way. They're just differentiated like oil and water. Energies settle to their own likeness.
Hmm.
Like oil and water, but they are not opposites any more than 150 is the opposite of 500. You notice that those two numbers are not opposites. It's something that I guess the world in general, if they're not doing spiritual work, they don't tend to notice about suffering in general. Suffering in general tends to come out of duality, the world of duality. And this, a map like this helps us to get out of that world of duality and helps us to relieve our suffering by getting out of that world.
Right, because a lot of the suffering that we do is unnecessary.
Yes.
It's our ego telling us we're not good enough, we're not worthy, we're not, the enoughness is a huge one. I don't have enough money, whatever. That is something, once you've learned about your thoughts, then the challenge is to catch yourself when you're
Yes.
listening to the ego, because the more you listen to it, the more powerful it gets. The other thing that the higher self, or that part of the divine, I experienced that in a near-death experience. That is pure love, pure peace. It's exquisite. There's no ego chattering. Whatever is happening, as Byron Katie says, is what's meant to be happening. It's a beautiful place to be. And we all have access to that, especially if
Yes.
we get quiet, or we learn to get quiet through meditation and other practices. We can find that. And that is up here at love and up in these higher states of consciousness.
Yes.
And maybe you can talk about why anything above courage is in the higher range and everything below courage is in the lower range.
So even though this is not a map of opposites, it is a map of, it's obviously it's a map of vibrations and frequencies, but it's also a map of quality. So we're looking at the quality of consciousness and what happens to the light of consciousness as it descends from higher levels to lower levels. We just noticed that the nature of consciousness, when it descends from above 200 to below 200, it becomes what we call negative. It's characterized by stressful emotions or emergency emotions. Emergency emotions are also called. So whenever we notice that sense of stress or even a sense of emergency that's within our own psyche, that's something that we are experiencing, you could say that we're experiencing something that's probably below 200 according to this map, something that's below 200. And a lot of times, where Buddhism is concerned, let's say, it's really concerned with this craviness and desiringness that's kind of coloring everything. And so there's an intensity to what the egoic mind thinks it wants. We call
Mhm.
desire. What the egoic mind thinks it wants is an intensity to it, and it thinks it's not getting what it wants, and so a great deal of stress and turmoil can be created from that. So these lower levels are characteristically different than what is above 200, but they are along the same continuum. So like I said, as the light of consciousness descends, it takes on different characteristics as it descends.
And we could see that pride, anger, any of this down here, aggression, desire. Here's desire and craving. Yeah, and Buddhism talks a lot about that, how the mind with desire, and then fear here at 100, anxiety, frightening, punitive, and then we go down to dense emotions, evil, vindictive, blame, guilt, shame, and then down below this is death. When we act with courage, I mean, there's more to it with willingness and acceptance going up the scale, but talk about courage as the dividing line here. And what does it look like for somebody who wants to move up in terms of consciousness? And why would they want to move up in consciousness?
In general, the higher levels feel better. They feel much more freer. They feel much lighter.
Mm-hmm.
They may feel like relief. But if you're stuck at a lower level, like pride or below, you may need some kind of action, but it's an inner action. So it's an action within your consciousness. You need some kind of active energy to get you over the hump, to get you out of the lower emotions.
And intention, right?
Yeah, and an intention. So
Mm-hmm.
courage is indicative that that you are inwardly agreeing with a positive movement, a positive trajectory or direction. And so it takes courage. It may take courage to get above 175 or to get above the lower levels because it requires a commitment, an intention. You may not know what's going to be on the other side of that. So a lot of times, a transcending some kind of field that you're stuck in requires going through the unknown, and it takes courage to go into the unknown because you might not know what freedom is really like until you get into it, until you step into it. So I think that's why courage is the first step of the higher emotions, is because it's kind of active, it takes energy, it takes agreement, it takes commitment, it takes alignment. You need to be willing to be aligned with your own courage, your own inner courage within,
Mm-hmm.
to move forward within in consciousness, to move forward and drop the negative emotions, which if you're stuck there, you're probably used to them. So if you're stuck in a lower level, you're used to them and you might become comfortable with them. So instead of being comfortable with the lower emotions, you step into courage and endeavor to rise above them. Then afterwards, that energy can sort of settle in and settle down, and we call that you're coming into neutrality and willingness. This great feat of courage to come into a higher level of freedom, and now you can settle down. You can trust, as you just pointed to. You can trust you're satisfied. You felt a sense of release or
Right.
relief. You can kind of stabilize. I think prior to that, courage was unstabilizing. So you had to unstabilize the lower levels through courage.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you can kind of stabilize your energies. You can relax a little bit. You can breathe a sense of relief. Hmm.
Predominant emotional state is trusting.
Yes.
And then willingness. That to me is you have to be courageous or act with courage, as you said, and intention
Hmm.
and then make a decision. I think willingness is something I've experienced where I had one foot in, one foot out. And
Hmm.
one thing that comes to mind is a mastermind I wanted to join. It was an expensive thing. I was also nervous about doing it. And could I do it? All these chattering thoughts were coming in. And I found out once I paid, and then I got scared, caught cold feet, wanted to back out, didn't back out, and put both feet in. And really discovered willingness, and that once I was in, I was in. Once I had
Hmm.
made the decision to do
Right.
it, that was really the thing, is to decide. And then I did it. I think over here it says intention, hopeful, optimism, because I can see, yes, that's as I move to that level, I can see that. Anything you want to add about
Yes.
willingness?
A little bit about what Dr. Hawkins says about willingness and acceptance. He says that in the world, this tends to look like the people who really do good work in the world, their overall level of consciousness, the doers of the world, people who do the things that need to be done and they do them with integrity. That's where they hang out. They tend to hang out in willingness and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a powerful for humanity, since actually Dr. Hawkins discovered most of humanity, their overall level of consciousness is below 200.
Right.
The people who tend to live their lives above 200 are quite helpful for the whole of humanity.
Doesn't he say the majority of the people in the world, and this is why we have wars, is that most of the people are in this lower energetic consciousness state, right? So as we climb up, acceptance, which the predominant emotional state is forgiveness, which is it's really one of the spiritual tenets. So what would you say about spirituality as we move up here?
Well, your own spirituality keeps getting more and more powerful, but less and less forceful. So there's less and you're dropping away force, which can handle a counter force. So you're dropping more and more counter forces out of your life, and you're empowering yourself as you rise up. You're empowering yourself to greater levels of freedom, greater levels of forgiveness, and the forgiveness can run deeper and greater.
Hmm. And
And
transcendence over here, it
mhm,
says. I can give you an example of that is what I experienced actually while I was in the hospital in Sharp Memorial 8 years ago. And my trauma physician said to me, his name was Dr. Kill. Dr. Kill said, you know, everybody who comes in here wants to get out as fast as possible, but you're different. It's like you've accepted
mm,
where you are because I had accepted it. I mean, what could I do? I was having back-to-back surgeries. I had three more surgeries within days, and I'd already had two in Mexico. So I was in this place of, I would say, transcendence. I don't know what merciful feels like, but
mhm.
that's, I accepted I was there. So it's a powerful place to be because we're not fighting reality. Like he said, most people in the hospital don't want to be there. They're fighting reality.
It's totally understandable, but not good for your health. Yeah, and well, you might be, if you want to get out of the hospital, you're probably in desire. You're running the desire and the craving, and you're trying to
Hmm.
crave to get out of the hospital.
And you're
And
mad. A lot of people are
yeah,
mad and they're
you're
down in
angry.
this
Yeah,
negative.
as they perceive it. Yes, perceive it. Yeah, and so if you're running that anger and the desire, you're likely contributing to certain types of hormones in your body that are not usually helpful for healing. So it's
Hmm.
yeah, it's counterproductive in that way. You could be running
Right,
cortisol or adrenaline when that's not what your body needs. Your
right.
body needs to move up to acceptance so that you
Yeah,
can drop the cortisol and the adrenaline and get out of the fear-based emotions and
yeah.
help your body heal.
And one of the things too that once I had a near-death experience, I'll just share again from just experience, is that I chose in the near-death experience to use love and gratitude to heal. Where's gratitude on this chart?
Yeah, if it's not labeled, it would probably be 500 or above. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. hmm
So love is at 500, joy is at
hmm
540,
hmm
and then bliss. I've read him talk about near death that can be up here at 600. In my experience, you bounce around. You
hmm
don't stay at, as you said in the beginning,
hmm
we all have a level that we usually operate in. And it might be different moment to moment during the day than it is at our level. So I went up here, but I was really in a lot of this place during the hospital,
hmm
and gratitude and acceptance, even peacefulness. I wouldn't say quite serenity, but I was really at peace. You come back down and the ego gets you going again, then you can bounce around down in here again. But the
hmm
beauty is that if you realize when you're in shame or guilt, as you said, when you can look at this chart and say, oh my goodness, I was just blaming myself or shaming myself or something that you can change. Grief is grief. I mean, when you're in grief and you've got it, you really have to feel these emotions, but you can also work with love and work with gratitude and other emotions, I think, to
Yeah,
move that around. But I'm not saying to spiritually bypass those
right,
emotions. It's just one of life's emotions we have to go through.
right, right. Well, there's one other thing about the negative side, and that I found was interesting. I think Byron Katie says this too, and that is that um, you can actually use, and this comes back to non-duality, you can actually use higher levels of the negative side to get out of even lower levels of the negative side. So if you're stuck in apathy and despair at 50, if you suddenly move to grief, that's a very, very good sign if you were stuck there. So if you were in apathy and you start to move into grief, sign that you're
Yeah.
moving. Some of the other, I don't know if you'll have access to these if you're stuck in apathy, but even if you have access to anger, I know Byron Katie recommended people listen to angry music if they're stuck way down there, and that could get you out of a really low level. If you do it consciously, so
Right,
you
right,
need to
right.
make sure that whatever you do that's down here, you do it consciously. But the point is that you don't begrudge yourself any of these levels, and you take a notice of where you are and see if you can go higher. And that way, some of the higher negatives can help you get out of some of the lower negatives.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that before. That's interesting. For people who don't know about this map, how did David was an MD, PhD
Hmm.
through a lot of things, and I've heard him talk about even 12 step, how the group of 12 step itself has a consciousness of love. That's why those groups can be so powerful. Also, he talks about Course of Miracles, which you kind of facilitate as well. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, well, do you want me to talk about how Dr. Hawkins discovered the map,
Yeah,
or?
yeah, let's talk about
Okay.
that.
Okay. So first, Dr. Hawkins discovered applied kinesiology. And with applied kinesiology, he discovered that what his forefathers or forebears discovered about applied kinesiology tended to be local. So people, doctors and therapists, tended to discover that the body reacts in certain ways to positive and negative stimuli, which was great. I mean, it was phenomenal. You know, there were phenomenal breakthroughs by Dr. Goodhart and some of the others. I can't remember their names now. Dr. Diamond, I think.
John Diamond. Yeah.
Yeah, John Diamond. Yeah. And so they discovered some really awesome things about what the physical body could do in terms of reacting to positive or negative stimuli. And then what Dr. Hawkins discovered was that the body can also react to what he termed non-local stimuli. So the body can react to things that are in the field of consciousness, in the universal field of consciousness. The body can react, and even if those things are, well, you know, whether those things are negative or positive, that non-local things can affect the body too. So once he discovered that, and once you figure out the weak versus strong differential of the body's muscle, and for him, he tested out the shoulder muscle. Once you discover the difference between a weak and a strong response for whatever you're testing, it could be a thought, it could be a book, it could be a philosophy, whatever you're testing. Once you discover the difference between weak and strong when you're testing someone else, in his case, a lot of his research was with his wife, who Susan, who he would
Yeah.
test her arm. Once you discover that differential, then you can make up a scale, because now you have a basis for making up a scale, which is the differential between weak and strong.
Hmm.
So he made up several, perhaps several different scales before coming up with this one. And at first he came up with linear scales. And then when he would calibrate someone like the Buddha or Jesus, he discovered that they're like off the chart, and you can't quantify people like Buddha or Jesus in a linear chart. So then, eventually, through trial and error, he discovered that a logarithmic chart would work best. So that these numbers aren't linear numbers; they're actually a logarithm. And so each of these numbers we see on this chart are to the base of 10. And the importance of these is how these numbers are relative to each other. They're not so much what is the objective energy of these levels, although someone did figure that out with what would a thought going through the brain of these various levels, what would the wattage be? Someone did figure that out, but that wasn't the main thrust of this work. So the main thrust was to first find the weak and strong response of the muscle, one in an impersonal way. And once you find that, you can arbitrarily make a chart based on that weak versus strong response. And then not only that, not only make an arbitrary chart, but to make a logarithm, make it so that the numbers follow a logarithm, because the numbers are so huge. So the chart is arbitrary, but what it's based on is not. It's not based on arbitrary. The weak strong response.
Remember, I was talking to you about my coaching instructor, Martha Beck. She would use this a lot when she gave talks because it's kind of a dog and pony show and tell. And she would bring someone up on stage, and how she would get to weak is her question would be because let me just show you this. So the arm is out straight, and is that right? 2
Oh,
fingers.
that's how Dr. Hawkins did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And that's how she did it. And she would say, okay, say, repeat after her, I like to vomit. So they would say, I like to vomit, and their arm would go down because no one likes to vomit.
Right.
That's Martha. And
Right.
then she would say something that positive that they wanted to test.
Hmm.
And that's how you do it. The arm tests. I found that really interesting when she would do that. So you can actually use this arm test. And I believe, I don't know which book he explains it in. See, which book is it in where he talks about, does he talk about how to do it?
He talk in the appendices of several books. He talks about it, but the
Okay.
main thrust of the work is describing power versus force.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Power
versus
versus force. And so
hmm
you can, and especially if you have someone who knows how to do it, it's great to test questions you want to know. Let me think if there's anything else that you want to share about this. The spiritual, as we talked, I'll just share this. The spiritual paradigm is up at this top level, understanding above 400.
above 499.
Mm,
And
yeah.
by the way, so I've gotten this question before about this chart.
Hmm.
Some people have asked me, what happens to love above 600? And does love just go away or something like that? And no, that's not the intention of this chart. The intention of the chart is to demonstrate that love is 500 and above, and love begins to dominate your consciousness at 500.
Mm,
So it's not that it goes away at higher levels, it's just that you start to be dominated in that way. And then, of course, higher levels that are in the 900s, near 1,000, are even more dominated by love than they are at
right.
500.
Yeah, love is really, I think it's why we're here. I mean, this is
Yes.
the whole thing we need to learn is about love. I know I experienced love and peace up at this near-death experience area. So, I mean, it was profound love
Yes.
for
Yes.
everything. It's just,
Hmm.
I love to live in that place, but I probably
Hmm.
wouldn't be able to function. It's fantastic. So I do everything I can to try to come up to this level.
Hmm.
That's where I try to be. I came back to learn a lot of this. So I'm here, so I'm practicing it.
Yeah. And you mentioned the spiritual programs earlier, like A Course in Miracles and the
Yes,
12
that's
Steps.
it.
Yeah, and they tend to hang out at 540 and above, so even above the base level of love and joy and above, which is of course inclusive of love. And so 540 and above is where the 12 Steps and A Course in Miracles tend to hang out. And Dr. Hawkins also discovered that for very severe addiction and healing, things that need to be healed at a very severe level, that is an energy that sometimes that's the only energy that works, is 540 and above. Severe cases, that's the only energy that works.
I've actually finishing my 12th step, and then you kind of do them again. And I find it a wonderful practice. What's really true in AA is people don't stay sober if they're not in the program and if they don't learn to turn their will and their life over to the power of God.
Yes.
And that's whatever God means to them or anyone.
Right.
But
Right.
how is it in Course in Miracles? What is when you start studying say more about that.
In A Course in Miracles, there's three major books, and you could kind of go to whichever of the three major books you gravitate to first. What is calling you, whether it's the textbook, the workbook, or the manual for teachers. In our group that we do here, we do them all, but only a piece of them all in one day, and we follow a calendar schedule, so you can touch on them all at the same time if you want. There is a way to go through all three books in 1 year if you like, and of course the middle book, the workbook, that is an annual book. I mean, it's a daily book that goes for 1 year. That's what I mean.
Hmm.
So there are daily lessons, and actually Dr. Hawkins had something to say about that. He did recommend the daily lessons from A Course in Miracles. And so that's one lesson per day that you do at your of your own, and then it's nice to be able to check in with a group at least once a week while you're doing that. And I know some groups check in daily, actually, they check in with each other daily, and
And so most
some
people, if
do.
you're doing it, you're going to be at a certain level. Is that,
Well, it's profound that you would be attracted. I mean, to me, it's profound that you would be attracted to doing A Course in
hmm,
Miracles. Yeah, and actually, uh, A Course in Miracles, I think, played a role in the discovery of this map of consciousness, actually, for Dr. Hawkins, because
mhm,
he was sort of the host of the second attitudinal healing center in the world. The second attitudinal healing center was in New York, and that was based on A Course in Miracles and based on another doctor, psychiatrist. I forget his name now. Um, but anyway, with observing the students of A Course in Miracles at the Attitudinal Healing Center in New York, which Dr. Hawkins hosted in his building, in his hospital's building, I believe, he noticed he was able to observe people rise in their level of consciousness while they were doing A Course in Miracles, while they were
hmm.
doing the lessons. And he was wondering, like, what's going on here? Like, um, so that led to an investigation, and he started to investigate. Are there levels of consciousness that people are like transcending, like almost for good? Like they're
Hmm.
transcending some of these levels in a very meaningful way and not looking back and not going back. And so somehow, when he was observing the students of A Course in Miracles, that played a role in how he shaped this map of consciousness and the discovery process. I'm not
And
even sure if before that he intuited that there were discernible levels of consciousness such as this map brings forth. I'm not sure if he was able to discern that before A Course in Miracles or not. He might not have been able to.
and we think he also was in 12 step at some point.
Yeah, and he was involved with 12 steps as
Right.
well.
He
Yeah.
seemed to know both and
Yes.
talked about the power of the groups, the group
Yes.
consciousness.
Yes.
Great. Well, is there anything else you want to share about this map of consciousness?
Sure. Just if any of this rings true to you, and if any of this is interesting to you, maybe check it out more online. Maybe see if your local library has any Dr. Hawkins books. Check out Power versus Force or the Letting Go book, Letting Go: The Pathway of Surrender. Those are both excellent primers into Dr. Hawkins' work. Also, the Healing and Recovery book. Dr. Hawkins has done like 11 plus books, through his career, so there's a lot to it. But for primers, I would say Letting Go, or
Hmm.
Power versus Force, or Healing and Recovery. Those are good
Right. I
books
would
to check.
say, yeah, they're more accessible than
Yes.
some of the other books. And Healing and Recovery is quite good. That's the first thing I read when I got back home after the accident. I was just pouring through that.
Hmm.
That's really good. And then Letting Go is really good. So the map is predominant, really, isn't it? In most of all of his books or all of his work.
Yeah, because it's an excellent way to contextualize spiritual teaching. So
Yeah.
to contextualize it in a non-dual way, to contextualize it in a non-judgmental way, so we're not judging any of these levels here. We know that humans can find themselves at any level at any given time. Yeah, it's just helpful to as an all-encompassing context, a contextual teaching tool, and
Yeah.
pretty much all of human inner experience, the inner experience of inner consciousness, can fit inside this map.
Yeah, I think that that's wonderful, and I appreciate you being here. And one of the things I think you probably know this as well, but what I've realized is that we're all here to be self-realized, whether we know it or
Yes.
not. Most people don't know that.
Yeah.
And I know Oprah says that as well. And I think that is what we're trying to do by talking about the map today is to show people that there is these higher states of consciousness and what can I do to get there. For me, my experience is I had to suffer greatly to get the
Yes.
near death experience. I
Yes.
don't want to do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Byron Katie says, suffering can be your teacher, right? So
Suffering can
suffer.
be.
Yeah.
It's always wonderful to talk with you. I'm in two of your classes now, which I really enjoy a lot. Gives me a lot of meaning and purpose. But thank you so much, Kevin. And I appreciate you and being here, and we might do this again on another topic.
Okay,
So
great. Thank
thanks so
you.
much.
Yeah, thank you.